Okay.
Okay. March 5th, 2022.
Yep. So the subject is spirituality. What about it? What does it do for you? The term.
The word.
Yeah.
Always disliked the word spirituality.
Yeah.
In itself, because
Okay.
it always seemed to me that it poses an opposition between the spiritual and the material, or between the ideal and disembodied versus the messed up and incarnate life.
Yeah. The ideal and the real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a similar reaction. It's like spirituality. Yeah, for me, it's analogous with ethereal, being ethereal. To be spiritual, somehow to be ethereal, to be up in the clouds somehow, right?
Yeah, the play among the Platonic ideas.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Disincarnate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the term is associated with religiosity and with being religious. So let's go back to the term religion. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you know about the etymology of religion? The word religion.
Yeah. So the English word religion goes back to Latin.
Yeah.
So religare, we're looking at the etymology of that.
Yeah.
Meaning what? Like binding together, tying together?
Yeah. To bind together, to connect together. So the meaning seems to be, at least from St. Augustine onward, to bind oneself to God, but also it has the meaning of something that binds people together. Almost, and for me, it has an unavoidable tribal association. You know.
Yeah.
That whoever shows up being of the same religion is somehow of the same tribe.
Yeah.
And that goes back to Jewish roots, I think. Yeah. The sense of the chosen, the people who are chosen. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess any covenant between that it's sort of like creates the people and it creates their relationship with the God at the same time.
Right.
So the Abrahamic covenant is
which remains
sure
still to this day somewhat tribal in Judaism.
I didn't realize you were going here.
Yeah, I am.
Great.
Yeah, I thought I'd put you on the spot.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, family, blood.
I mean,
tribe.
as a Christian missionary, it's my,
That's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I'm setting you up. Yeah.
So what about that?
Okay, so tribalism. So is there a lack of tribalism in Christianity, which purports to be a more universal form of religion? I don't think so. Very quickly becomes associated with ethnicity also.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So it's what religion somehow gets connected, and I don't think it's a mistake, with ethnicity, When you think of Islam, for example, just immediately in the common mind, what do you think of? You think of Arabs, or
well,
at least darker people,
but I also think of the Prophet's last sermon, which was against discriminating based on these things.
Sure, yeah.
So there's that too.
Well, there's Ibn Khaldun, the father of, along with Heraclitus, one of the fathers of history, whose main theme is asabiya in Arabic, right? Which is asabiya as a belongingness. Yeah, that's what the term means. And it begins with a tribal affiliation, especially among the Bedouin.
Yeah, an honor-based.
Honor-based, but tribal.
Yeah.
Tribal belonging. And so Islam, in the eyes of Ibn Khaldun, took the asabiya that was tribal and universalized it.
Yeah,
the ummah, or the larger community of Muslims.
Well, Izutsu makes the same case about the Quran having a transformative impact on those traditional honor society and bringing it to another level.
Yeah,
of the values of it.
But not to go too far into Islam, let's stick with the religion. There is a sense here. Well, does that really work? Let's see, ethnos. Yeah, a nation, to be of a particular nation. It used to be called a race, that people of certain races gravitate towards Christianity. There's this racialized idea, an ethnic idea of what belonging to a particular religion might entail. Even if it's broader than a local tribe, still coming into the religion is in a sense to come into a more universalized form of tribe, which immediately sets up self and other, right? A collective self and otherness.
Sure.
Those who belong to the tribe, those who are outside.
Yeah. There's always the in-group, out-group part of it.
In-group, out-group.
Yeah.
So with religion, we have this idea of that which binds people together and that binds them to an imagined source,
Okay, imagined. Okay.
Yeah. Well, imagine can be derogatory, can be used in a derogatory sense. I don't mean it that way necessarily. For me, it's a neutral term.
Okay.
It just means that you have in your mind an image.
All right.
Yeah. I see.
I'm still on the whole Abrahamic thing.
Okay. So what
the whole note got raised?
Yeah.
Well,
the ante got upped when I dropped that one into the discussion.
It's such a complex theme in both the, for me personally, in terms of the particularity of what is Judaism. Even the word itself would have to be unpacked, honestly.
Yeah.
And its own history.
Is this a touchy subject? Somehow, did I just walk into something?
Well, there's a tension in both. More than Christianity and Islam, there's a tension between particularity and the universal. I think, because of this reason, because of the rule, the 12 tribes as really the I want to say Jewish mythology is the common descent from 12 tribes from one family. So it really is that. That's the archetype. However universalized Judaism became in the eyes of some of its adherents, or
actually, yeah, but only later in its history. And then you can't get away from the Jew being the outsider in Christendom.
Well, in fact, this distinction between,
I thought I wandered into that somehow, touched a nerve.
Well, it's already implied in the spirituality carnality piece for me personally, because Paul, or Saint Paul, depending on how you regard Paul, part of Paul's brilliance was in privileging the nascent Christian community over the Jews, precisely with that distinction between spiritual versus carnal.
Yeah.
Because the way of reading the Hebraic inheritance of the Christians was as they were baptized in the flesh, but we were baptized in the spirit.
Right.
For example. Which is just fascinating. I mean, that just as an interpretive move, it's brilliant. There's even something inspiring about it, but to be on the receiving end isn't so high.
Yeah.
Right.
We're laughing about stuff that's deadly serious.
Sure.
Okay, so we have the inclusion exclusion part of religion.
Yeah.
Which is really important. And I think that's the reason why many people are repelled by religion. The idea of if you belong to a certain religion, you've got a hold on the truth, on the absolute truth to start with, or that you're one of the chosen, as opposed to the hoi polloi, or whatever the religious equivalent of that would be. The unbeliever.
Well, there's always we're the
scorned unbeliever.
We are the community to whom the revelation has been given.
Right.
As opposed to them.
Yeah.
Whoever they are.
Works for me. Works for me.
Right?
Yeah.
Especially in a world, this is another issue which I have to throw out there, which is a world, the pre-modern world, in which the idea of religion doesn't even really exist in the way that we're used to it today. So they would never have thought that there's more than one religion.
Yeah.
That's a modern idea.
Yeah.
Which we almost never really take cognizance of that fact. But In the pre-modern world, there's only really one true religion.
Sure.
And there's
It's
just
the one that you happen to be living.
it's the
along
one that
with.
you have, and everything else is degenerate form of. And this now we're talking about the ancient world now.
Well, not so ancient. I think it still exists.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. So now
that's why, by the way, I'm sorry, but I have to say, that's why in medieval times, there would have been real debates that were held in royal courts between an imam, a rabbi, and a priest, or something along those lines.
Right. Sounds like a joke.
Well, it is a joke, but maybe only now.
No,
it was deadly, because it was deadly serious.
Of a Jewish joke.
They really, well,
yeah.
I'll see what I can do. But they really did believe that since there only can be one right answer to what's the right religion, because there's only one religion in the first place, let's try to settle it by staging a debate.
Yeah.
And there were many.
Yeah. Okay, so we have this sense of inclusiveness in the modern world, in the contemporary times, at least in most of the West.
Yeah.
There's this sense that to belong to a religion, to be a fervent believer of a particular religion, is to be in some ways bigoted, narrow-minded, self-righteous, and all the rest. And so there's a reaction to being part of religion, a movement towards secularity. And along with that, because there's still a need somehow in the human being for what we discussed last time, an ultimate value, or a sense of something greater than oneself and greater than the whole of existence that somehow binds it together or holds it together in a meaningful way. Because all that is still there as a need, common human need, then people in a secular society move from religion to spirituality, a vaguer term. I'm spiritual but not religious. You hear this
that's true
repeatedly.
Yeah.
And I often go, well, what does that really mean? I'm spiritual but not religious. Well, where do the ideas that accompany your spirituality have to come from somewhere?
Yeah.
And where are they coming from?
I mean, I think that in the case of myself, it would, though I don't use that distinction for myself, but what it would mean applied to somebody like me would be somebody who has a relationship to Judaism or some other tradition, but clearly without living according to the religious law that's traditional to that religion.
Okay.
Halakha, or
Sharia.
And in that case, I'd say Judaism and Islam are distinct from Christianity in that way.
Their insistence on following the law.
Well, there's
sacred law.
There is traditional set of, I don't even really like the word laws in this context, but at least guidelines that are held to be applicable to every domain of life.
Yeah, but you can't get away from commandments.
Right, that's it.
Yeah. You cannot get away from that in Judaism, and you cannot get away from that in Islam. Right? The Quran is the word of God for most Muslims, and it commands you to act in certain ways, and it prohibits you from acting in other ways. And so there's this idea of a judgmental God who is weighing your actions, your behavior. And in Christianity, it goes even deeper, even your thoughts, your hidden thoughts. So there is this idea of a supreme moral evaluator, with whom you may be in greater alignment or not. And in the crudest sense, it's a punishing father figure who either rewards you at the end of the day or punishes you.
Sure.
In the case of Christianity, and some forms of Judaism, and certainly Islam, eternally. The punishment is eternal. Life is a trial, and there's somebody watching. It's sort of like a big brother image. An eye in the sky that's watching everything you do. And people naturally rebel against this, don't you think?
Oh, I want to kind of rush to qualify that comment about Islam, or even any of these, because there would be a multiplicity of readings of that.
Well, yeah, I'm taking the crudest reading.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Okay, I'm not talking now about the finer aspects of religious thinking.
Gotcha.
No, I'm thinking about at the crudest level.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so then we have this free-floating spirituality.
Up
right?
here in Northern
Like New
California.
Age. Yeah, well, not only, it's
Yeah.
really now global.
Well, sure.
It's a free-floating spirituality. We can call it New Age. Yeah, which draws syncretically from various sources. It's very eclectic. And somehow it seems to be also quite ungrounded.
Because it's not grounded in a particular series of prescribed behaviors like keeping kosher or
Well, because yeah, I mean at a very primitive level, you know, there's something called normative ethics, right? Where you follow the rules because the rules are there to be followed. And that applies to religion also. And then there are other forms of ethical thinking that are not quite as determinative. They don't simply collapse into rule-bound behavior. They're finer in their distinctions and require more of the individual to think about what's right and what's wrong, usually along rational lines, I might say. So, okay, but spirituality, the way that most people live it, seems to be, and it's a little hard to generalize like this. I'm being very broadly, I'm broadly generalizing.
Yeah.
Seems to be void of that.
Yeah, it seems to, I think if I follow you, the people who would generally say I'm spiritual are already taking for granted their freedom and their autonomy to make all kinds of determinations about every aspect of their life, including this one.
Yeah. And in modernity at large, you know, there's the sense of that there are no eternal verities, eternal truths. There are relative truths, and one's approach to truth should be pliable. And if you're well educated, reasonable, and if you're not so well educated, largely subjectively based. Yeah. And so on and so forth. But all of this starts to unravel, you know, you get a sense of unraveling in all of this. And let me go one more step. And so the spirituality sort of is vaporous. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because the life that it's grounded in is maybe also a bit. Because I think, if I may.
Yeah, certainly.
Because I think that that autonomy goes to is multi-layered. It's like my freedom to decide how to live my life.
Yeah.
That's already a unique statement in the history of humanity. I mean, that doesn't go back that far.
Right.
Historically, but my freedom to live my life is predicated on, not only is there not a tribe or a clan or a community that is authoritative over over my daily engagements in the world, but also there's not a family that is authoritative in that way. Right. For someone who feels like I'm spiritual because I'm the one who makes decisions about these things.
Yeah, well, this of course implicates the modern sense of.
So that's a life where there aren't. Sorry, where I was going with that is that's a life in which there are not much collective structures at all around me that situate me. Yeah, seemingly. Right. Seemingly.
Well, the me here is a privileged me. It's an individualized me. You know, it's not a me that lacks in self-identity. By being disconnected from a collective form of identity. Maybe that's a little too abstract.
Well,
you know, the subjectivity now starts to be a problem.
For sure.
The modern sense of subjective is interiorized, privatized, individualized, right? And with that, when it's taken to an extreme, it can be disconnected from a sense of what Buber would call an I-thou form of relationship. Yeah. And where for Buber at least, and he's obviously philosophizing from the basis of Judaism. Yeah. Without the I-thou relationship, without relatedness, there is no I. Yeah. There is no full subjectivity, fuller subjectivity. Yeah. 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 Right. But that's largely absent from a modern and especially technological world.
And what I was getting at when I said collectivity is there's also a missing we in there.
Right,
also.
right. Whereas in
Maybe.
highly collectivized societies,
Yeah,
the we is dominant. There's no
absolutely.
you without the we.
Yeah.
Who are you to even think that?
Yeah, yeah. That's
Right.
exactly. You don't get to
You're
ask that question.
subsumed in the we.
Yeah, that's right.
So one of the models we came up with.
This is how we do it.
Yeah. Over
Yeah.
the years is what we came up with this thesis antithesis, individualized, hyper individual societies and collectivized societies. And in the middle is something else, a communitarian form of life.
Mhm.
Yeah. But that's a different subject. So back to spirituality, this free floating sense.
Yeah.
Etherealized sense
Mhm.
is what I think both you and I take issue with.
Well, I think that also, if I to add to that too, part of what is at issue there is within a consumer capitalist society.
Right.
I go to a weekend retreat in Marin to meditate in whatever tradition I'm doing, let's say.
Yeah.
It's sort of like I'm adding the kind of spirituality that I prefer to my life, but the core of my life is over here.
Mhm.
The center is over here, and I'm appropriating. I have the freedom to appropriate what aspect, eclectically, I think you used the word before, whatever aspects of spirituality fit me.
Yeah.
In a way that could be critiqued as consumerist. Could be.
Well, I think it's rightly
Yeah.
critiqued as consumers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Chogyam Trungpa came up with this back in the 70s.
Yeah.
The phrase spiritual materialism.
Right.
And coming as he did from a more traditional culture,
Yeah.
it seemed that was the case, especially when he hit the West and especially when he hit California. Spiritual materialism. There's also a sense of spiritual narcissism.
Mm.
There's also the sense among certain spiritual people that they're special because they're spiritual.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to go back to the idea of the chosen, that somehow they're part of the chosen because they're a higher order of being than other people are. Yeah. Oh, and I call that spiritual narcissism.
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've just gone through religion, spirituality. What about mysticism?
Before you do that,
Mm.
though, I feel like I have to say, like for a lot of people, if they consider themselves religious, they might identify that as something to do with humility, not narcissism.
Well, yeah, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about
Yeah.
the modern sense of spirituality
Gotcha. Okay.
that you get out here, not completely, but for the most part, is at least haunted by a narcissistic sense of privileged, refined ego. Let's call it that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Particularly if you would broadcast yourself as spiritual. I think this is part of what you're.
Well,
getting at.
the self-identification that comes along.
I'm a
with
spiritual person.
that. Yeah, I'm a spiritual person,
Something like
as
that.
opposed to the rest of you.
Right. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, there's a lot more that could be said about all of this, but we're just doing quick hits on it.
Yeah.
The idea of mysticism now comes into play.
Mm.
The allure of mysticism, which is obscurantism. Yeah, and for a normal, rational person, mysticism. The moment you mention that word, it's to mystify, to obscure.
Right.
And then for those seeking novelty, it's mystique, right? To be drawn into the mysteries, which are more exciting than everyday life. I mean, so these connotations are there.
Yeah.
The allure of the occult, the hidden.
Yeah.
That somehow there's a key to life that's, that someone might find in these ancient tomes or among the great white brotherhood or some group like that, the Sarmong, or I mean, theosophy. A lot of theosophy is bad. Blavatsky, the figures like Madame Blavatsky were drawn to that.
Sure.
Then you have the dark side, Aleister Crowley, and
QAnon.
And QAnon, but it's all very fascinating. The Illuminati,
Yeah.
So for the common, reasonable person, mysticism, it's not a term that holds much value. In fact, it has a largely negative value.
Sure. Seems equivalent to irrationalism.
Irrationalism,
All the rest of it.
yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
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 So now among phenomenologists of religion,
Well,
that's another story. So there's a purported core to mystical experience, which people like W.T. Stace famously describe in, I have the book here, Mysticism and Philosophy is the title, in which he attempts to get to what he believes is the phenomenological core of mystical experience. And
transculturally.
Yeah. Of course, this can be debated. I'm not going to go into the debates right now. I'm just trying to get to even get a toehold in this. So the way he describes it, and he describes it in two ways: an extroverted expression and an introverted expression. So the common characteristics of the extrovertive mystical experience: number one, the unifying vision, all things are one. Yeah. And in the introvertive, which shares a lot with the extrovertive expression, it's the unitary consciousness, the one, the void, pure consciousness.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So either, I'm going to repeat that, the unifying vision that all things are one. And in the introverted mystical experience, the unitary consciousness,
right,
the one, the void, pure consciousness, I would say pure consciousness itself. And then he goes on from there. So I'm not going to go through the whole list, although it's really interesting. The name of this chapter is The Problem of the Universal Core, how to define mysticism itself, apart from all the things that people take to be mystical. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, which from a rationalist point of view would be largely based on superstitious belief. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or even derangement.
Sure.
So let's stick with that unifying core. Is this at the heart of all religions, as was thought by, and it continues to be thought by, perennialists, that all religions have at their heart the mystical experience, and all religions lead for the truly devout to that kind of experience. You follow me so far?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a debatable point. But in the case of, let me go one more step. In the case of Sufism, Sufism makes the claim that it is at the very heart of Islam. It is the heart of Islam. And the heart of Islam is, or is expressed by, or is encompassed by the mystical vision, a mystical vision of unity with God.
Sure.
Okay.
Right. None of the people we would consider Sufis of the classical period would ever call themselves members of something called Sufism.
Well,
as a separate group from Islam. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but that's not my point. My point is that there's a belief, particularly among perennialists, that at the core of every major religious tradition lies the mystical experience that W.T. Stace claims is a unifying vision or a unitive vision.
Right.
Right? That one encounters directly in some way, as a direct perception, the unity of all beings, that all beings are interrelated. Or the way I like to express it is as the axiom that we've used, right? That existence itself is a field of interrelatedness, suffused by consciousness that is caring. So the question here for me would be, is that axiom that I came up with applicable to all religions or only some? You know, that one can arrive at the actual experience or direct cognition of the interrelatedness of all beings, right? A form of unitive awareness
Through
following that religious path.
as such, the religious path, not necessarily it's
The religious
a
path
meditative path
that
or something
taken
like
all the way.
Mhm.
No, I don't separate them.
that. Mhm.
Because every tradition, Christianity has a meditative path within it. So does Judaism. Right.
Sure, but that's why I'm asking about what you mean by the practice of it, because
I mean, if one is truly devout and follows that religion
Mhm.
to its depths, one will find that it turns into a form of contemplative, therefore meditative practice that leads to the experience that I'm referring to.
I see, yeah. Yeah, so I think like maybe a phenomenological way to ask that is at the depth of the living the experience of any particular religious tradition.
Yeah.
Does it yield a kind of originary experience of that unity?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And is that what it really means to be religious?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Not just spiritual, but religious in the sense of feeling oneself connected to, interrelated with
Mhm.
the whole of humanity and beyond that.
Yeah.
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 The whole of existence.
Yeah.
And that's what binds you
Sure.
together. That's what brings you together with yourself, brings you as a self into a fuller sense of integrity. And that also binds you to others with whom you might share that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Share that quest, share that meaning, and share that experience.
Mhm.
Okay. That's as far as I can go.
All right.
You?
Well, I mean, for myself, I immediately would say yes to the question.
Yeah.
And it also, but it immediately raises the question of what does it mean to live to the bottom, any one of those traditions?
That's a lot. Yeah.
It would immediately evoke that for me, especially.
Well, that it evokes those questions.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
And yeah, it should. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.